This is the story is called Mr. Slow, Mr. Wrong, Mr. Tall, and Mr. No. Enjoy! Mr. Slow, as you might well know, or maybe you don't live next door to Mr. Busy, he built his house himself slowly. It had taken him 10 years. And as you might well know, or maybe you don't, Mr. Slow talked in an extraordinary slow way. He talked like this. And every single thing he did was as slow as the way he talked. For instance, if Mr. Slow was writing this book about himself, he wouldn't be able to read it yet. He won't even have got as far as this page. For instance, if Mr. Slow was eating a currant cake for tea, it took him until bedtime. He'd eat it crumb by crumb, currant by currant, chewing each crumb and each currant 100 times. For instance, last Christmas, it took Mr. Slow until New Year's Day to open his Christmas presents, and then it took him until Easter to write his thank you letters. Oh, he was a slow man. Now, this story isn't about the time Mr. Slow went on a picnic with Mr. Busy. That's another story. No, the story is about the time Mr. Slow decided to get a job. He read all the job advertisements in the Sunday paper, which took him until Wednesday, and then he went and got a job reading the news on television. Can you imagine? It was very embarrassing. Good evening, said Mr. Slow. Here is the 9 o'clock news. It took him until midnight to read it, and everybody who was watching went to sleep, so that job wasn't any good, was it? Then Mr. Slow got himself a job as a taxi driver. Take me to the railway station, cried Mr. Petty as he leaped into his taxi. I have a train to catch at 3 o'clock. Right, said Mr. Slow and set off at 1 mile an hour and arrived at the station at 4 o'clock. So that job wasn't any good, was it? And that summer, Mr. Slow got a job making ice cream, but by the time he'd made the ice cream, it wasn't exactly the right sort of weather to be selling ice cream. Brrr. So, Mr. Slow got himself a job making woolly scarves, but by the time he'd finished making the scarves, it wasn't exactly the right soft of weather to be selling scarves. Phew! Poor Mr. Slow. He went around to ask the other Mr. Man what he should do. Be a racing driver, suggested Mr. Silly. Can you imagine? No. Be a racing driver, suggested Mr. Funny. Can you imagine? No. No. Be a speedboat driver, suggested Mr. Tickle. Can you imagine? No, 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 no. But then, Mr. Happy had an extremely good idea, much sensible. be a three-motor driver, oh, she suggested. And today, that's exactly what Mr. Slow does. Slowly backwards and slowly forwards, he drives up and down and up, ever so slowly. The next time you see a steamroller doing that, took and see if Mr. Slow is driving it. If he is, you shout to him, "Hello, Mr. Slow, are you having a nice time?" And he'll wave and shout back to you, "Yes, thank you." He'll shout, "Goodbye." Whatever Mr. Wrong did was absolutely, totally, completely, utterly wrong. However hard he tried, he just couldn't do anything right. Just look at his house. One fine morning, Mr. Wrong woke up. He hadn't slept very well because of the way he'd made his bed the day before. He jumped off the bed, fell over, put on his shoes on the wrong feet, went to the bathroom, tripping on the bed mat, squirt of some toothpaste on the wrong side of his toothbrush, goodness, ouch, and went downstairs. Bump, 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 bump. Not a very good start to the day. In fact, his usual wrong start to the day. In his kitchen, Mr. Wrong poured some milk onto her cornflakes and missed. As he sat in his kitchen that fine morning eating his dry cornflakes, he sighed. "Oh dear," he thought, "I do so wish that everything I do wasn't quite so absolutely, totally, completely, utterly wrong. Oh no, all this has happened." So, after breakfast, he went for a walk in order to think how he could solve his problem. It took him 10 minutes to get out of the house because he kept trying to open his front door outwards instead of inwards. As he walked along, he passed a worm. "Good morning, dog," he said. The worm grinned. He was used to Mr. Wrong. He met the postman. "Good morning, Mr. Wrong," called the postman cheerfully. "Good morning, doctor," replied Mr. Wrong. "Oh dear." He met old Mistress Twinkle who lived down the lane. "Good morning, Mr. Wrong," she smiled. "Good morning, Mr. Twinkle," replied Mr. Wrong. "Oh dearly." And then he met somebody he had never met before. Somebody who was sort of looked like him, but didn't. "Good morning, sir," said that somebody. "Good morning, madam," replied Mr. Wrong. "I'm Mr. Wrong." "I guessed that," replied the person. "Well, I'm Mr. Right. Now tell me," he went on, "why are you walking along looking so miserable?" "Because," replied Mr. Wrong, "I can't do anything right." No style." "In which case," said Mr. Right, "we'd better do something about it. Follow me." Enough said Mr. Wrong in the opposite direction. Mr. Right hurried back and turned him round. "This way," he said, and they walked together to where Mr. Right lived. It was a house which somehow looked something like Mr. Wrong's house, but different. Mr. Right took Mr. Wrong into his living room. "I think," he said, "that's the only way you are ever going to change is for you to come and live with me for a while, and you may end up being not quite so absolutely, totally, completely, utterly wrong about everything. Sit down, he said, and we'll talk about it. Mr. Wrong sat down and missed. Mr. Wrong stayed with Mr. Right for a month, and during that time he changed. After 1 week, he was slightly less wrong than he had been before. After 2 weeks, he was even more slightly less wrong than he had been before. Okay, test my and Bolly. And after a while, for weeks, he was a changed Mr. Man. You could hardly tell the difference between him and Mr. Right. Don't you agree? Mr. Right was delighted. Told you, he cried. Told you that everything about you might end up being not quite so absolutely, totally, completely, utterly wrong. In fact, he continued, you really turned out all right. Mr. Wrong blushed. It was quite the nicest thing anyone had ever said to him in the whole of his life, and he went home and lived happily and right ever after. Test my test. Now that. Now you probably think that's the end of the story, don't you? Well, it isn't. And the reason it isn't because of what happened to Mr. Right. The trouble was, you see, that the longer Mr. Wrong had stayed with Mr. Right, and the more right Mr. Wrong became, the more wrong Mr. Right had become. Isn't that extraordinary? Oh dear, Mr. Right sighed. My plan didn't quite work out the way I planned it at all. And he went to bed. In the box. Ha ha ha. Oh no. Mr. Tall was very, very, very tall. Quite the tallest person you've ever met. In fact, quite the tallest person you've never met, because you've never met anybody with legs as long as Mr. Tall's legs. Have you? Oh dear, he used to sigh. Oh dear me, I do so wish that my legs weren't quite so very, very, very long. He decided to go for a walk to think over his problem. He was just stepping over a tree when he heard a little voice. Hello! It was Mr. Small, standing underneath a daisy, but Mr. Tall was so tall he couldn't see him, so Mr. Small shouted at the top of his voice, Hello! And Mr. Small about as loud as a bee's sneeze. So it took quite some time for Mr. Tall to spot him. Oh, he said gloomy. It's you. You don't look very happy, said Mr. Small. What's up? I am, replied Mr. Tall, because of these silly long legs of mine. How? Said Mr. Small. Mr. Small decided to cheer him up. Let's go for a walk together, he suggested. So they did, which of course didn't work. It was like a giraffe going for a walk with a mouse. Then Mr. Small had an idea which did work. And because of the length of Mr. Tall's legs, they very quickly walked all the way to the seaside. Come for a swim, cried Mr. Small. Can't, replied Mr. Tall. By the time it gets deep enough for me to swim, I'll be at the other side. So Mr. Small went for a swim, while Mr. Tall sat down with a face which was nearly as long as his legs. Mr. Tickle came along. Hello, he said. You look as if you need cheering up. Care for a tickle? No thanks, replied Mr. Tall. What I won't care for are some different legs. Mine are much too long. So are my arms, said Mr. Tickle cheerfully. But all the better for tickling. And off he went chuckling, looking for somebody to tickle, looking for anybody to tickle. Mr. Nosy come along. Cheer up, he said. You look very down in the mud. What's the problem? It's my legs, replied Mr. Tall. They're too long. So, my nose, replied Mr. Nosy, laughing. But the better for poking it into other people's business. And he went off looking for somebody to be nosy about. Looking for anybody to be nosy about. Mr. Greedy came along. Hello, he cried. You look gloomy. What's wrong? It's my legs, explained Mr. Tall. They're too big. So, it's my tummy, replied Mr. Greedy. But I'll keep the better for filling with food. And off he went, licking his lips. Mr. Tall sat there and thought about Mr. Tickle's arms and Mr. Nose's nose and Mr. Greedy's tummy. He smiled and then he grinned and then he laughed out loud. He looked at his legs, those very, very, very long legs of his. All the better for walking, he chuckled and walked home in 4 minutes, 40 miles. Mr. Small came out of the sea after his short swim. And how am I going to get home? He asked himself. So he set off walking all the way home 40 miles. That was last year. He got home yesterday. Mr. No lived up to his name. It was not unusual for him to say no. In fact, he could not say yes. Little Miss Yes also lived up to her name. She said yes to everything. In fact, she could not say no. One fine day, Mr. No met Little Miss Yes. As Mr. No could not say yes, and as Little Miss Yes could not say no, they said, Hello, mister. Hello, Little Miss. Would you like to come and have tea in my home? Said Little Miss Yes. No, said Mr. No. He continued on his walk, but it made him sad. Along the way, he met Mr. Happy. Hello, are you not having a happy day? Asked Mr. Happy. No, answered Mr. No, and it was the truth. You'll be happy one day, woo-hoo, declared Mr. Happy as he walked away. No, replied Mr. No, even though he hoped to be wrong. A short time later, Mr. No met Mr. Tickle. It's a nice day for a tickle, he said. No, replied Mr. No. I'll be on my way then, sighed Mr. Tickle. No, said Mr. No. Can you guess what happened next? Yes, that's right. Tickle, tickle, tickle. But that's not no fun, protested Mr. Tickle. Doesn't my tickling make you laugh? No, confessed Mr. No, and it was the truth. Mr. Tickle went to find someone else to tickle. Mr. No found himself lonely and unhappy. Just then, Little Miss Fun passed by. Hello, Mr. No, she said. You might know I love dancing. Will you give me a little dance? No, replied Mr. No. But Mr. No regretted his answer. He regretted it immediately. Why? Well, because little Miss Fun went on her way, and once again Mr. No found himself lonely and unhappy. Suddenly, he had an idea. Doo! If you want to know what it was, turn the page. He went to buy something in town. Then he went to visit little Miss Yes. You again? She exclaimed with a big smile. No, he replied without a smile. So am I dreaming? She asked. No, he repeated. Well, if I'm not dreaming, come on in. No, he replied, turning half around, and guessed what he was holding behind his back for little Miss. Yes. Flowers. Beautiful flowers. No, I won't give the flowers to little Miss Yes, thought Mr. No. But he gave them to little Miss Yes anyway. You are nice, she said. No, he said. Yes, yes, come in for tea, she insisted. No, he replied. In that case, shall we meet up again tomorrow? She suggested, and Mr. No said, no. We should have tea now.